Okay, thank you.
This
Joanna.
is Dale.
Hi, Dale.
Hi, Dale.
Can you hear me good?
Yes, sure can.
Okay, good.
Okay, you have a full committee, Joanne, along with, it looks like, Brian Olmstead and Pat McMahon, who are not on the committee, but also joining the call.
Okay.
So, and it is the appointed time.
All right, so let's call this meeting to order for the Finance Committee. It's meeting number 4-23. It's Friday, June 2nd, 2023, 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's being held at the Water Center and mostly on Zoom. Welcome everybody, because this is the first of 3 meetings we have scheduled to review the projects that are on the Regional Sustainability Priority List. And we're all interested in hearing about these projects. With that, then we'll go with introductions and attendance. Do we want to just keep a track of who's online, Brian? How do you want to handle that?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll just, for everybody's benefit, I'll just note that we have yourself as chair, Jeff Raybould, Mark Gibbs, Dean Stevenson, Dale Van Stone as Finance Committee members, and then other board members that are participating are Brian Olmstead and Pat McMahon. With that, yeah, we'll just keep track of folks both here in the room and online.
Okay, so we have slated today 4 presentations. And I want to remind the presenters that let's try to keep this to 30 minutes so we can finish our meeting within 2 hours. I think that's about the max of my attention span, and probably others in the room as well. All right. So do you want me to introduce or ask for the first one, Brian, or do you want to?
Sure. First up is the North Fremont Canal System pipeline project. And it looks like Aaron Dowling, are you gonna be doing that presentation?
It'll come from my computer, but Sean Moppin will be doing most of it, Canal President. Thank you. I just tried to share my screen. Is that coming up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up closer to Sean and let him take it away.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just first, thank you on behalf of the North Fremont Canal System. I did want to also mention we do have Aaron Dowling here helping us in attendance. We also have Jake Owens from the NRCS here as well, if you would have any questions for him. So just thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for considering funding this project, and thank you for your past support of our previous projects in the form of loans. This is we'll be doing this project in phases, and we've had 4 out of the 5 phases completed. The funding we are requesting is for the 5th and final phase. As we move along here, we'll go along pretty quickly here. If you have any questions of any of the 3 of us, Aaron, Jake, or myself, please just interject those at any time. So the North Fremont Canal System, we were formed in 1987, coordinated efforts between 3 main canals north of Fall River. The 3 canals are the Marysville Farmers own the Yellowstone canals. We are strictly a water delivery entity. Our canals were actually formed back in the 1890s. The construction began thereafter. It's some difficult terrain up there to build a canal. A lot of side hills, a lot of rolling terrain, a lot of grades, elevation changes. But our forefathers, they were determined people as well. You can tell by just the way things were constructed. So we're hoping to continue in that and for the delivery system in the future. The North Fremont Canal System delivers water to over 500 shareholders, covering a little over 31,000 acres. We have relatively junior natural flow water rights, which makes us highly dependent on storage water. This makes the conservation all the more important. The majority of our, you can see the little graph there of our water rights. So our natural flow CFS is 384, and we do have just a hair under 30,000 acre feet of Fremont Medicine storage. And just to let you know, the bulk of our water rights in those 3 canals is November 5th of 1895. Just a little bit of background of average annual diversion, 28,500, excuse me, 65 acre feet. The pipeline projects, we mentioned that the North Fremont Canal System consists of the 3 canals, Farmers Own, Marysville, and Yellowstone Canal. The pipeline projects are strictly for the Farmers Own and Marysville. And this is due to the way the terrain is and the fall that we have. We'll discuss that here in just a minute. The elevation change, essentially. In some years, almost the entire annual diversion is storage water due to our junior water rights. A lot of years, our diversions often don't commence until early June due to our short growing season. Our crops, seed potatoes, we're the largest seed potato area in the United States. I think we can still say that. There's some other areas that have kind of producing more as well. So, but I think we can still safely say that. Barley, wheat, canola, alfalfa, and pasture livestock production. We are the primary revenue source is our shareholders' assessments. We do have part ownership in a hydropower plant, which is located on our canal, the Marysville Canal specifically. And we generate a small amount of revenue from that power production. The North Fremont Canal System owns and operates over 50 miles of pressurized pipelines and open canal channels. Is there any questions so far? I've been going kind of fast to make sure we can stay within that half-hour time frame.
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Project location. You're probably familiar with those areas. We're in southeastern Idaho, roughly 60 miles north of Idaho Falls, 60 miles south of West Yellowstone, Montana. The map there you see Henry's Lake, Island Park Reservoir, Grassy Lake. Those are kind of the reservoirs that are close to us. The next slide is a map of our project area. So if you look to the very south, you'll see I guess you would call that a light blue colored line. That is the proposed phase 5 of our project. So that was the last one we need to put in. Everything to the north of there, the red line, the blue line, the kind of pink line, and the purple line at the top, those have all been completed and functional. Something to take note of where the circle is on the map, that yellow circle. The last phase we did, we anticipated this phase 5. And so what we did is we actually upsized the pipe to accommodate this phase. So within this phase 5 project, we will not have to do any headgate construction or upsizing a pipe on the upper end because that's already been completed. So essentially from the bottom of that circle down, that is all just pipe installation, which will greatly decrease the amount of time the construction will need on this. Got some more project background. We started with phase 1 in 2004. Like we mentioned earlier, we're 4 out of 5 phases complete and in use. We are a pressurized system. We do have 377 feet of elevation fall from the head gate to the end. So the entire project was pressurized via gravity. Phase 5 is essentially shovel ready. We've got over 90% of the engineering done. We were ready to start this project back in 2020 before COVID hit. And of course, we all know the results of that, impacted the product availability, and the project price increased July 1st of 2020 to August 1st of 2022, 84%. So that's why we are requesting the funding. This project is going to have 19.5 miles of pipe, starting with 54-inch all the way down to 4-inch. So, and something interesting about this project, the actual genesis of this entire project was looked at 2 times before, once in the 60s and once in the 80s. And it just wasn't able to come through, which is, looking back, is probably a good thing, because then it would all been in steel pipe and we probably would be replacing it anyway. So this is a project that's been thought of and looked at in our area for quite some time. This is a slide that Fremont, or that Darren Dowling put together on behalf of Fremont Madison. Okay, what this shows is our total storage allocation in 2022. Farmer zone, this was the percentage allocation. You can see that number, 4,618. Maryville, 11,249, for a total of 15,867. If you look at analog years, 2001, 2007, 2013, with the respective canals, you can see that the total is 25,719. So we have a savings essentially in 2022, keep that in mind, that's the year we're looking at, of 9,852 acre feet. And something just to maybe bring up at this point, we'll revisit it here in just a little bit. We'll show a map that shows that our project is above the model on the ESPA. But the thing to take into consideration is that when we are short water, which we typically are in drought years, we rent water from Fremont Madison. That rental water comes from wells that are in the ESPA. So any water that we do not have to rent stays in the ESPA aquifer. So we'll revisit that a little more here in just a bit. So the second one, you can see the first on the left-hand side there, chose these years, 1995 to 2005, because 2005 would have been the first year that any of our pipeline projects were functional. So those years, our average diversion were roughly close to 34,854 acre feet. 2018 was the completion of our last phase, phase 4. And from 2018 to 2022, our average diversion was 28,564 acre feet. Annual savings of 6,289 acre feet. Percentage-wise, that's 18% in water savings. Now, there's some things too that we'll talk about in a moment as well, but this is water that's staying in the system. So this is water that is, staying in the aquifer. Some of our first diversions on our canal system are pasture ground that's on the very western edge of our service area. And in the open canal system, a lot of times when they would call for water, we would have to put 2 or 3 times the amount of water in the head gate to get that water to them on the end of the system. Since we are a sealed system, after the system is filled, essentially you can put in just what the people need at the tail end. So that is water that is staying in the river at a critical time, like right now, to fill the downstream reservoirs, to make sure that we have 100% allocation, or as close to it as we can get. So something to keep in mind there. As we mentioned earlier, this map, you can see the blue line is everything to the left of that is below the ESPA. Everything above that is above the ESPA according to the model. So the green dots on the left-hand side are the Fremont Madison wells that have to pump the water when we are short and need to rent water. Above the ESPA, that is our area, and something I think this project, we can safely say that it's going to benefit the ESPA, and it's going to benefit our regional aquifer as well. Something we've done above the ESPA in our areas, we do have some planned recharge sites. We're going to look at that. We'll discuss that more in a minute. So we are going to be able to do some, obviously, if you put things in that pipe, you will lose your incidental recharge. But now we can do managed recharge. And we've also done some things with the school district. We've been able to hook the high school and the elementary school up to this system, which has greatly taken the pressure off the city system, and also running that, since the city also has to run that through a nitrate treating plant, that has helped with that as well. And we hope to work with the city in the future off of this phase to be able to hook in things such as the city parks and possibly the Ashton Living Center nursing home. So something to keep in mind there. Are there any questions? I feel like I'm going through this kind of quickly. I just want to make sure nobody has any questions at this time.
Are you seeing any questions, Brian Patton?
I am not.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So just as we mentioned earlier, so we have a connection to a managed recharge site. Actually, members from the IDWR Aquifer Stabilization Committee came and looked at our recharge sites last summer. The places that we intend to do the managed recharge. We do reduce the groundwater diversions from Fremont Madison wells, which is water that stays directly in the ESPA aquifer, and our conversion from groundwater to surface water for school districts. And we're hoping to continue working with the city on that in the city parks, and like we mentioned, possibly the Ashton Nursing Home, who is one of the biggest water consumers in the city of Ashton. The pipeline will provide gravity pressure. So all of these pumps will be fully pressurized. So there will be no pumps at all. Some of the other projects were close enough to the head of our canal that we did have to have some booster pumps, but this phase will be fully pressurized. This phase alone is estimated to reduce power annually by 1,761,300,000 kilowatt hours saved. And every pump on phase 5 will be removed. This once again, this will be fully pressurized. As far as aging infrastructure, we plan on removing 31 old check structures, give or take. A lot of them are 30 to 40 years old. I know some of them that are older than that. Removal of dozens of old head gates, turnouts, and we all know what those are like and how much they leak, things of that nature. We wanted just to touch briefly on some of the project benefits as far as wildlife is concerned. You know, the Henry's Fork is a world famous fly fishing destination, contributing 50 million to our local economy annually, not including the additional 14 million in property tax revenue from second home ownership in Island Park. So reduced water delivery from Island Park Reservoir during the irrigation season will increase winter flows in the Henry's Fork. These winter flows are the single most important factor for trout survival on the Henry's Fork. We will reduce diversions from the Fall River. This increases the river flow. And we also included what was emailed yesterday. We do have a letter of support from the Henry's Fork Foundation in this. They're one of the main bodies that checks the river, kind of governs the river on water quality issues, and they are in full support of our project. The project benefits, no benefits to existing hydropower facility that we currently have. There's a potential for future hydropower development in the pipe. We've got all that flow through that pipe, and we've been looking at ways. We've talked to a couple of engineering firms on how we can put turbines in the pipe. This last phase will actually go right next to our local electric co-op substation. And we are trying to figure out ways to be able to tie into that to generate power from strictly just the water flowing down the pipe. This leaves more water. This project will leave more water in the river for downstream power generation. And the nice thing about a pipeline that is truly a sealed system as this would be is what you put in is what you get out. That's one of the beauties of it. There's still a minimal amount of push water required, but it's essentially what is in is what is taken out. So from a water quality issue standpoint, I should say, This project will eliminate return flows from the canals that are, of course, we know how that all is. Lots of sediment, nutrients, degrading the water quality because it is a sealed system. The low water temperatures in the river are critical for trout survival in the Henry's Fork and its tributaries. The Provost pipeline will eliminate warm water return flows from the canal to the river. And that is stated in that Henry's Fork Foundation support letter. They wrote that out pretty well, I thought. So please take time and look at that. Once again, we've worked with the City of Ashton school districts to connect to their systems and the sports fields through the pipeline, reduce the amount of city water that has to run through their nitrate treating facility, which is there is a letter of support as well that we included from the City of Ashton. Their nitrate treating facility is almost at its capacity. So they're going to have to make some changes there, improvements that is going to be extremely expensive for the city. So any help that we can give them is a benefit for them and for us. Some of the regional benefits to our project. North Fremont Canal System reduced storage water diversion will increase carryover and subsequent allocations from Fremont Madison Irrigation District. In years Island Park and Grassy Lake storage rights do not fill. This will benefit 44 canal companies and over 2,200 individual storage water holders. Additional carryover in the upper Snake River system may increase the likelihood of recharge water rights coming into priority earlier the following spring. And the project will reduce our required diversion during the spring when the reservoirs are filling, which is a benefit to every water user. There are several pastures at the end of our system, like we mentioned earlier, that require water early in the year. The earthen canals require significant push water. For the pipeline, we could divert only what is needed for their irrigation system. And these pastures too, this is a good example this year. They are currently watering. And because of some of the rains we've had the last couple of weeks, I doubt there'll be any crops that need water for probably 2 to maybe 3 weeks. So there's that period of time there where that water will stay in the river and help fill the system. Some of the local benefits of our project, something we've done in the past on the previous phases and we plan on doing on this one is we install hookups for the fire department. So if there is a fire in rural areas, they do not have to go all the way back to town to reload their trucks. They can hook right up to the pipeline, fill the trucks, saving a lot of time. I know there's been several fires in the past where this has been a huge benefit. We've closed in a lot of canals, some by the school, which was always a hazard for us. We'll close some that run close to and underneath the highway, especially if you've ever been in southeastern Idaho from Memorial Day to Labor Day. There's a lot of traffic there. There's some danger hazards. We've had accidents where cars have been in the canal, things of this nature. So from a safety standpoint, this will be a good benefit. We do have broad stakeholder support. So this is included as an alternative to conserve water in the Henry's Fork Drought Management Plan. Signers on the plan include the Fremont Madison Irrigation District, North Fork Reservoir Company, Henry's Fork Foundation, Trout Limited, the Nature Conservancy, and the Bureau of Reclamation. As mentioned earlier, we do have support from the City of Ashton, letter of support from the Henry's Fork Foundation, and we also received verbal support from Fish and Game, but we have not, they have not been able to supply us with a letter yet. And something to bring up as well, this project, and it has been for years, is supported by the Idaho Water Users Association by resolution. So it's resolution 2023-7. I won't take time to read the whole thing to you. I believe you have it in front of you. But I think the takeaway is that last sentence, that therefore be it resolved that the Idaho Water Users Association supports the North Fremont Canal System Incorporated in its efforts to fund, plan, and build the North Fremont North Fremont Gravity Pressure Irrigation Project. So we are supported by the entire Idaho Water Users Association. And this is, if you have any questions on the funding here, there's one reason we asked Jake Owens to be here from the NRCS to maybe talk just a little bit about the time constraints we do have on using the NRCS funding. So the source of our funding. So the NRCS is $7,157,988. And I'll just kind of turn this a couple minutes over to Jake to kind of maybe explain to you on the time constraints we have there.
Sure. This is funding that we acquired in 2020. It was in 2020, actually. So we're several years behind. And we're up to a point now where we really need to utilize our funding here within the next year or so, maybe into the fall of 2024, or else we lose it. It goes back to national. So there's $7.1 million there to help fund the pipe, and yeah, we're just down to crunch time at this point. We've proceeded with the NFCS has already proceeded with spending some money. Profile several thousands of dollars on that. There's a lot of work that's been put into a design. The design's not quite there, but we've got what we need as far as good estimates on quantities and that sort of a thing. So I think there's a pretty good understanding what needs to be done. It's just a matter of NFCS getting the rest of the money to do it.
And to Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have to have some money spent by August of 24, or we do lose our funding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make the board aware of that. So that is the money that is confirmed through the NRCS, the 7.1 million. We are requesting 7.8 million from you guys. And that is makes up the balance of the bid that we currently have. And the North Fremont Canal System in and of itself is going to come up with $4.8 million. There is $4,800 acres on this phase 5 project. The shareholders have agreed, we do have signed documents with them to pay $1,000 an acre towards this project. So the total project cost currently is $19,769,044. Is there any questions on the funding or the source of the funding?
You answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Timeline. We are hopeful, and this is coming from Ryan Johnston, who is the lead engineer from the NRCS on this project. He believes that the project will be certified in January of 2024. So we do have over 90% of the engineering done. But once that is finalized, it will be sent off to be certified at the NRCS.
An independent review process.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
our national will look at it.
So their national will review it and then approve it. As soon as that's approved, we can commence. So we can actually start construction, we feel, in August of 2024. And something we have shown with our last 4 projects is that we can do this during the winter. We're not having to pour a lot of concrete. There are some restraints with handling of pipe in colder weathers, but we can work through the winter and get this project completed by that next spring. Something we can work on this fall, provided we receive the funding, is a grass waterway. Essentially what that is an overflow. Since this last phase of the project, we'll put all of our canals entirely in a waterway system, just the Marysville and the Farmer Zone. And in the pipe, we do have to have a way for an overflow system should we have a massive power outage or something along those lines. So any question on a timeline?
I have just one question. The pipe construction has to commence by August of 2024, but won't you be using the canal during that time frame?
Yes, we will.
So how will that work?
Well, typically what we do is we work with the landowners to try to adjust the planting of what crops. So we try to plant crops that can come off early during where the construction is going to be. So instead of potatoes, maybe they'll plant grain. And so as soon as they're done with that, we can start digging the pipe. So the pipe does not lay in the original canal. It is more along straight lines, along property boundaries and things of that nature. So the pipe does not lay in the original canal. So the original canal can stay functional while the construction is going.
And then is there a plan for the original canal once the construction is completed and the pipes all laid?
Yeah, so what happens with the original canal is that they're just pushed in, and which is greatly enhanced just the landscape of it. We're able to remove power lines. We're able to get rid of, ditch banks where lots of weeds and things like that. So the canals are essentially pushed in and then farmed over.
Okay.
There are some low spots and sloughs that are left for recharge out of the pipe.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Joanne, this is Jeff. I just want to confirm, I think I seen at the beginning, we're recording this, so we've got a record of this presentation that staff can refer to make further refinement of their rankings for the overall project list. Is that correct?
That is correct, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from committee members or other board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you, North Fremont. This has been very helpful for me. I'm not familiar with your project, and I learned a lot today.
Okay, well, thank you. If any of you has any questions in the future, please reach out, and I just thank you once again for the opportunity.
Yes, I actually do have one last question that just came to mind. I'm sorry. Have you put in for the aging infrastructure grant money at all?
We did check into that. The issue we ran into there was the aging infrastructure wouldn't allow it. Wasn't enough funding available for us. The amount that we were requesting is above the limitations in that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Brian, I guess we're ready for the next presentation.
Yes, Madam Chair. Next up would be the Lewiston Orchards Exchange Project, and I see Barney Metz ready to go.
Good morning, and appreciate the Madam Chair for the opportunity and time for us to present our project to the Finance Committee, and I also appreciate the rest of the board members who are not a part of the Finance Committee tuning in today, because we think we have a pretty important message to deliver. I'm going to try. I don't think you can. You see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perfect. So most of you have some familiarity with our project overall, as it has dealt with touches and the reality across the strait over the years. And we also appreciate the Water Resource Board coming and touring our project before and getting an idea of the solutions that we've been working on and the complications that we have with the groundwater and surface water complications that we have with our system. So one of the things that hopefully you can see on your screen is we have a very collaborative, consensus-based approach to our system. It's not just Lewiston Orchard Irrigation District that's involved with this. We have both the United States Bureau of Reclamation and the Nez Perce Tribe. Also, as part of our MOUs that have been signed over the years, is the City of Lewiston and Nez Perce County, along with the Lewis-Clark Valley Chamber of Commerce, which deals with a lot of the businesses that are affected by what our project can do. We also have the support and involvement of many partners. Our congressionals have their staffs regularly attend our meetings and updates. So we have Senator Risch, Senator Crapo, and Congressman Fulcher's office invested in this. We also have formal letters of support from former Governor Butch Otter, the University of Idaho Water the West Program, NOAA Marine Fisheries, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and also Trout Unlimited. So our support ranges from the federal side down to the very local level. It also ranges from the environmental side through the tribal side to patrons of our district that are using this system. So it is a very broad regional support looking to find resolution to our issues. This is a map basically that we are going to use to help orient you on where we're at. If you can follow my cursor, this is the Lewiston area here. The green area is the Lewiston Orchards. That's our portion of the city on the bench that we service. You can see the Snake River moving on a line from the bottom of the page to the top. State of Washington is on the west side of the Snake River, and then you got the Clearwater River here coming across. If you look closely at this on the right-hand side here, you can see the pink designation boundary for the Nez Perce Reservation. And then above it, you can see Soldiers Meadows Reservoir, Lake Waha, and Reservoir A. And through this system, we either are affecting waters that are on the reservation or originate off of it, but do flow through the tribal reservation. And the busy map to the left of the one I was using for orientation shows you all the tribal trusts and fee title allotments within the reservation that are impacted. So again, down here, if you can follow the cursor, Soldiers Meadows Reservoir, Lake Waha, and Reservoir A, and then all of the pink, green, and yellow lots are specific allotments that are being affected through this project. So there are some complications with waters that were intended for tribal use that have been impacted by the effects of the LOID project. So how did we get to where we're at now? The Lewiston Orchards Irrigation District actually formed as a private interest back in 1906, which is our first water right. The system was expanded from Sweetwater Diversion and Reservoir A to include diversion into, storage of, and pumping out of Lake Waha in 1915. And then the irrigation district was formed under state law in 1922, and they built Soldiers Meadows Dam on the Webb Creek watershed, and then we release water out of there, divert it out of that watershed, place it into the Sweetwater watershed, and it brings it all into our system. Once it leaves Reservoir A, our lowest reservoir in the system, it is fully pressurized from that point. Not only does it provide ag water, but it also does provide fire flows and fire protection and suppression within the Lewiston Orchards Irrigation District service area. So one of the issues that we've had is we have a low elevation system. Our highest point is no higher than 5,000 feet. So we tend to not have heavy snows over the course of the winter, and it can be a pretty flashy system. And so the system has never done very well in being able to deliver the amount of water that we have been promised. And in 1947, the Bureau of Reclamation took over ownership of the system, and the LOID continues to operate it in management for them. And our contracted amount is 2.2 acre feet per acre, and that amount has never been fully delivered upon. So the patrons of the district in the 1970s tried to resolve this issue on their own by building a pumping station out of the Clearwater River. Although it had favorable support, it didn't have enough to pass the bond threshold in the state of Idaho, and it failed. So the patrons of the district tried to resolve this issue on their own, and were unable to do so. In 2003, and through the late 90s and in the early part of 2000s, the water rights settlement and negotiations for the Nez Perce settlement as part of the Snake River Basin adjudication was underway, and this solution was actually a part of the initial terms of that settlement. And there was going to be a pumping station built out of the Clearwater River that would replace the surface collection system that we currently use now, which is gravity for the most part. And as the negotiations continued on and the costs continued to escalate, this provision was actually removed out of the Nez Perce settlement, with the caveat that the Nez Perce tribe is a specific line item we're allowed to continue to discuss and negotiate and litigate over this, upon which they opened litigation as soon as the agreement was signed. So when it couldn't be a part of the solution, it was important enough for the Nez Perce tribe that they weren't going to let go of it. and to get that water rights settlement through for the rest of the state and provide more certainty for other water users for the state of Idaho. To some degree, the Lewiston Orchards project was the sacrificial lamb as part of those negotiations. Go ahead. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So through 2005 through 2010, we've been under a series of lawsuits from the Nez Perce tribe against the federal government using ESA as its tool. We are currently have our fourth biological analysis submitted to NIMS for our fourth biological opinion. We're waiting for them to concur and issue that biop out. But we've been operating a system that really never had the full ability to deliver all the water there. And we've added the added pressure of now bypassing more water for fish than was traditionally done. And therefore we've put more strains on the system. So we took a system that was limited and we've put even another constraint on it. We had a local citizen in 2008. He formed a working group to bring all the parties together, and that was and we kind of termed ourselves the Lower Clearwater Exchange Project. It brought the tribe, the city, the county, the Chamber of Commerce, and patrons of our district together to figure out, instead of spending all the money that we were on lawyers and litigation, how can we put our resources more towards a resolution? Through the Bureau of Reclamation and the tribe, we did an appraisal study in 2011. We looked at 33 different alternatives on what we could do to resolve this. We came out with the traditional 4, do nothing, a pumping station either out of the Snake River or out of the Clearwater, and then a groundwater resolution. The Asotin County PUD across the river used to pump really heavily for ag in the 1960s, and based off of some of the data that we had from there, it did look like the groundwater solution could be a potential solution to our issues. The groundwater solution, which would take and pump water from our deep regional aquifer, which is 2,000 feet deep, up and put it into the system, would replace the surface water system. And although it was the least desirable by LOID, and it was the most expensive on a capital front, and also the most expensive to operate afterwards, it was one of the few that allowed wet water to be put in stream faster. So we're under the concept that for every well that's brought online, that bucket for bucket exchange, then we bypass surface water past our diversions, which allowed wet water downstream for fish sooner than the full build out of a pumping station. So in 2013, we started drilling that well, and in 2014, LOID applied for a new groundwater right. And again, in the terms of compromise and being good neighbors, we had to end up reducing our overall usage and right from 10,700 acre feet to 8,500 acre feet to help this process continue to move forward. Through about a 3 to 4 year period, the pilot well was constructed and put into use, and each well we're targeting for 4.5 CFS coming out of the ground, which then allows us to bypass an additional 4.5 CFS past our diversions on top of the ESA mandated flows that we have with NIMS. So in 2017, the first well went online. Things appeared to be okay. With the help of the Bureau of Reclamation, and they've been good partners for us in this, they funded the second well. We drilled that, we put that online, so we're up to 9 CFS coming out. And then in 2021, we ran into some issues. So that's the year of the drought. We were pumping both wells to try to meet demand, and we actually ended up having to shut down one of our municipal wells as we also deliver domestic water due to the impacts that we've had from the first 2 irrigation wells that are delivered. We operate within a critical groundwater management area, and it is a tough one for us to deal with. Dr. Ralston, who has done our hydrology work for us, shows that the obvious is there. The more big production wells you put into the aquifer, you should expect water decline, in which we have experienced. And the state's own hydrogeologist thinks it's even more severe situation potentially than Dr. Ralston's thinks. So it's a tough situation as the state continues to try to manage declining aquifers And we are adding, unfortunately, to the problem that we have with ours. So what are the three things that we're trying to solve here? One is for Lloyd, as we're trying to get a sustainable, adequate and reliable water supply that we can count on for each year. It's really difficult for people to plan if they don't know how much water they're going to have available for their future endeavors. We're also trying to wrong some of the rights that we have with tribal trust issues between the federal government and our project being on and through the reservation. And then lastly, and not necessarily least, is that we have anadromous fish in our system. We are underneath biological opinions, and it's really difficult for fish to have water, or fish to have, for the tribe and for the region to have fish if there's no water within the streams for those fish. So looking specifically on how this impacts Lloyd with not having that water system, we service 3,828 acres, which services about 22,000 people. We have never been able to deliver our full contracted amount with reclamation of 2.2 acre feet. We made it more difficult when we started having minimum flows that we had to bypass underneath our biological opinion. And quite frankly, how do we deal with this is we put the patrons on restrictions, and we deal with the management of that and use resources to manage people's watering habits over making improvements to the system. The Craig Mountain area is a low elevation system. And so we think that we are going to see this continue to decline in the future, that our snowpacks will continue to get less and will become more and more of a rain-driven system. Part of the difficulties that come with that is we're only allowed to divert water February 1st through October 31st. So sometimes we will have freshets in December and in January, and we cannot touch that water. And so we have extreme difficulties filling our reservoirs. So we think our situation with climate change is only going to get worse, and we need to get out of the smaller streams and into the bigger river if that's possible. And then the other difficulty is that we're already in a critical groundwater management area. Us continuing to poke big production wells into there is only going to make it, in our regional basis, more difficult for people to use the water and to manage the water that they have there. And quite frankly, the regional aquifer is divided by state line. And we have Washington on the west side and we have Idaho on the east. At some point in time, if we continue to impact the way that we have so far into the regional aquifer, and we're trying to avoid more discussions between the state of Washington and the state of Idaho, but they may have to look at some form of a conjunctive management as we continue to impact that system as it exists there. This slide goes back to number 2 of our point that the impacts that we have on both of the slides on the left and right is the Webb Creek watershed on the right, and it's the Sweetwater Creek watershed on the left. All of the pink and green areas are tribal or tribal fee or tribal trust lands that are being directly affected by the impacts that LOID has on water within their reservation. And then going back to the fish issue, when we've diverted our full allotment out of the streams prior to being on these biological opinions, we would typically dry up streams downstream of our diversions, and it's really tough for fish to be successful if there's no water in the streams. So key points in moving forward is, this really truly is a collaborative approach. Bureau of Reclamation, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has been involved, the Nez Perce Tribe, LOID, the City of Lewiston, Nez Perce County, and the Chamber of Commerce's continue to work together. We're looking for a solution to our issue. We think that although we've made it somewhat down the road of the groundwater solution, we think that there's complications and mitigations that would have to be done to continue on with using that as a solution. And we think that the total cost of the back end of the groundwater solution will exceed what costs would be out there for a pumping station out of the Clearwater River. We've asked all of our partners if anybody had a big red flag with us considering and looking at the options of switching from the groundwater solution to a pumping station out of the Clearwater, and they all think that there's some viability in that. None of them had any direct heartburn to do so. And it was one of the alternatives that was considered during the NEPA process that we did back in 2011 through 2014. Currently, we have the ability to pump 9 CFS out of the groundwater, which we are currently doing at this day. And then we're releasing that additional flows on top of our ESA flows downstream of our diversions for fish. 2 other items to take into consideration that it's going to impact and make the groundwater solution more difficult. If Lower Granite Dam, which is in the state of Washington, does come out as part of the cry from people to remove dams on the lower Snake River, that will drop the aquifer level by tens of feet to impact all the users in there. So there is a real chance that we have a significant immediate impact to the solution, as our regional aquifer is tied directly to the Snake River. And if that water level is lowered by removal of the Lower Granite Dam, then we will see additional complications into our situation. And then climate change. How does climate change affect our regional aquifer? Our aquifer tends to respond better when we have freshets on the Snake River of over 100,000 CFS at the Anatome gauge. And without the larger flows, because less impact from runoff, and the fact that more people upstream of us on the Snake River need that water and continue to use that water, and we continue to take water out of the Snake River and put it back into aquifer recharge in the Eastern Snake Plain aquifer, we think that there's going to be difficulties in slowly but surely degradation to our regional aquifer. We also want to adhere by the state's doctrine that we need to be using surface water first over groundwater. This solution of going to the Clearwater River would allow us to use that surface water rather than groundwater from a critical groundwater management area. And quite frankly, the only other diversion below us would be the city of Lewiston's water treatment plant. And then that Idaho water would be moving off into the state of Washington that's been unused. So one of the things I want to come back to is the Nez Perce settlement, which is starting to see its sunset. So this issue is not going to go away. It'll probably resurface. Is the fact that this exact project of a pumping station out of the Clearwater was the proposed solution back in the initial terms of this Nez Perce settlement. And once that had to be eliminated from a cost and negotiating perspective, the Nez Perce tribe ensured that it was listed out specifically as a line item to be allowed to be open for discussion and litigation, and the tribe has already litigated on it as soon as the agreement was signed. We continue to await and will continue to have to operate underneath biological opinions from National Marine Fisheries, which impacts an already limited system. And we think that we were somewhat of a sacrifice that was necessary to the stakeholders for the state of Idaho to ensure more certainty with the negotiations and signing the settlement of the Nez Perce agreement. And that is why we are asking for help today. We think a solution from the Clearwater River will be upwards of $60 million. We paid money along with the Nez Perce tribe and along with Trout Unlimited to do a 10% engineering design on this so that we had a more firm number to say how much these costs are. We have a path moving forward. We have a path that's been spoken with in terms of negotiations with the landowners for this to go. The Nez Perce tribe believes that the NEPA work has been done on this as an alternative as part of our appraisal study process that we went through. The Bureau of Reclamation can't commit because they can't have a pre-decisional factor, but they're wrapping up their conclusions of the data analysis on the groundwater impacts that have occurred, and will continue to look forward at this alternative as a viable solution. The other issue that will come up, I think, at some point is the Nez Perce tribe and the Bureau of Reclamation will have to discuss how much of the NEPA has to be revisited, if any at all. The Nez Perce tribe is pretty quick to point out that they would be the ones that would litigate against the federal government for not doing the NEPA work, and they want to see resolution of this, and that their interest is moving the project forward and not slowing it down through litigation over the NEPA process. So one of the things that we're looking for is we're hoping to get $20 million from the Idaho Water Resource Board as part of the solution for this. LOID is bringing $5 million of in-kind match to lay in the pipeline once we get up into the low pressure system. It's about 600 PSI down at the river. That's part from the river to the top of the plateau would be done as part of the contract work. And then from there, Lloyd Forces would pick up that pipeline and get it extended out almost 8 miles to Reservoir A. And then we think that we will have additional funding from our partners. The Nez Perce Tribe is committed in finding additional resources. The Bureau of Reclamation has been a very good funding partner, and NRCS is also interested in our project as being a potential partner as well. So why do we think that we're a good fit for this? First off, we have changed sustainability for the North Central Idaho region. We have a groundwater solution on the table now that is not working well. We adhere to the fact that the state would like to see us use surface water before we use groundwater for these solutions, and we have a chance to do so. And we think that we can do these at a more efficient cost. And if we continue trying to deal with the groundwater solution and mitigating the factors that are included in there. We are as collaborators as you can be. We are the federal government involved. We have our congressional support from across the state. Local from the city and the county perspective, the Nez Perce Tribe. We have environmental partners on board, which is typically not something that you see in a pumping station project that takes water out of rivers. And then the Lloyd patrons are interested in having a reliable and sustainable water supply being available to deliver for them. This project will protect our local groundwater, using the surface water first for irrigation and fire suppression, and not contribute to making that critical groundwater management more difficult for the state, as we already have the difficulties we have, and then hopefully giving the state more time to deal with how they're going to interact with the conjunctive management that may have to come down with the state of Washington over a regional aquifer that is split by a politically straight line. And then we just always want to call out that we do think that we took the hit during the Nez Perce water rights settlement, and we're reaching out for help now is because that issue is still on the table and it's not gone away. And I would guess that if it's at the sunset of the settlement agreement, that if it's not resolved, that issue is going to come back up. So at the current time, I appreciate the chance to speak before the Finance Committee and the rest of the Water Resource Board, and I'd be more than happy to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for Barney Metz? Well, I have one. I think it's important that we know the timing of your request.
Well, since we've already got the framework and the basis down for the engineering work, we can actually get into engineering and finish it out. At this point in time, it's not the path and the right of ways and that's going to have to be figured out, but it would move on to pump design, pump station design, and working with the Corps of Engineers for the intake coming off of the Clearwater River. The one unknown that exists out there, and this is something that I cannot answer simply because nobody knows yet what the Bureau of Reclamation's response is going to be to the level of detail that they're going to have to go through for their environmental analysis. It's kind of funny that the Bureau of Reclamation thinks that they need to do more work. The Nez Perce Tribe is insisting to them that they've already done the work and they actually don't need to do the work, that they're ready to go. So the Nez Perce Tribe will push hard to continue to move this project along, but we think that we can meet and definitely move towards spending some of these monies towards design and construction before the end of the ARPA funds when they're due.
Madam Chair, Barney.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, this is Brian Olmstead. I had the privilege to tour this project with Barney a couple of years ago, and it's a nightmare trying to manage for those endangered species in the streams, and you can't protect those streams and protect the rights of the irrigation district patrons. And I think the groundwater well it's not sustainable. Additional groundwater is just pouring more money down a dry hole, I think. So I think this Clearwater solution is the right one, and it's just critical, and it's very expensive, but I think that we need to help Lewiston Orchards get this project done, because there's no other sustainable solution, and the surface water's there, the water rights there, And it would just avoid all of the endangered species conflicts that could affect us all down the road. So thank you. Oh, and Madam Chairman, if I could, I struggled with my mute button a while ago. On the previous presentation, Fremont, I wanted to commend Sean and the district on their making sure that they take the health of the ESPA into account on any of these types of projects. We've got to make sure that it doesn't result in a reduction in the ESPA. So commendation to both presenters so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
this is Dale.
hi.
The funding for this now, as I understand it, is $20 million for the water resource department. And ARPA funds will be that part of that 20 million or all of it?
So
I just want
the-
some clarification. That's where the money's coming from.
So the LOID would be looking at requesting $20 million from the Idaho Water Resource Board. The determination of which pot of money that would come from would be the determination of the Idaho Water Resource Board. We will use that money along with our in-kind efforts and along with additional funding from the Bureau of Reclamation and the Nez Perce Tribe and our environmental partners to make up the difference to get us across the finish line.
Okay, thanks, Barney. Madam Chair, is this going to be ARPA funding, I assume, right now, I guess?
Joanne,
Or
this
the
is
board?
Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes.
Maybe I can answer Dale's question. I think the answer to the question today, Dale, is this project is eligible to receive funding through ARPA. We will have to make a final decision on where the ARPA money is going to go and the timing of when all these projects come together to make sure that we hit the window to utilize that ARPA funding in the timeline that Congress has established for us. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I just want to get an idea of the direction we're going in. I'm fine with that. It
Okay.
looks like we're going to try to window.
Yes, I believe there are at least 4 projects on our list that qualify for ARPA funding.
Okay.
And this is
Thanks,
one of the
Joanne.
4. Any other questions for the Liston Orchards project? Thank you, Barney. I think this
you.
is helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Brian,
next presentation would be from the Treasure Valley Water Supply Assessment Project. And is this Dan or Mike? Oh, okay. Yeah, just pull up right here and we can take it away.
Guys, before you get started, I don't know if you saw my note. This is Mark Gibbs. I had a previous commitment and I'm going to have to bail off your Zoom meeting at this point. I'll look forward to catch.
I think we lost him.
Yeah. We can make the recording available to Mark after the meeting's done.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, Madam Chairman, and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Dan Stevenson. I'm an attorney.
Press the button, please. Thanks.
Dan, it's difficult to hear you.
Yeah, this should be better. Yeah, Dan Stevenson with Sawtooth Law. I'm an attorney here in Boise representing the Treasure Valley Water Users Association and numerous water delivery and drainage organizations in the Treasure Valley. Presenting with me today will be Boise River Water Master Mike Myers and Mike Schubert with HDR. We've distributed, Neely or Brian, one or the other, has distributed to you a couple of documents in addition to our presentation. One I'm pulling up now is a timeline of significant hydrologic events in the evolution of water development in Boise Valley as it relates to our project. And I'll be speaking about a number of these occurrences during our presentation. The other is a handout with a few pages, a few slides from the presentation, which identify the phases of the project. On this page that I'm showing, are you all seeing it now? Okay. The project in 3 phases.
Excuse me, this is Jeff. I'm not, your screen share is not getting to me.
I think that's my fault.
And neither me either. And it's still very difficult to hear. Is there anything we can do to increase his volume?
Looks like we can give him Brian's mic.
Okay, how's that?
That's better.
Is that better? Okay. I should now be actually screen sharing and showing you 3 files. One is the timeline that Neely, I believe, emailed to each of you. Jennifer, thank you, Jennifer. Highlighting significant events in the hydrologic development and land use development in the Treasure Valley. And we'll be talking about this timeline as we go through the presentation. Another is a handout that I've pulled up now. This handout contains a summary of the 3 phases of our proposed project. In the slide that I'm showing, should be showing now. Are you seeing that? Have to click on that. Okay. Guess I'm not very good at this.
You were sharing something different.
I'm only seeing the 3 file names.
Sorry.
Jennifer's getting it taken care of.
Okay, there. Okay, this page summarizes the 3 phases of the project that we'll be talking with you about today. Provides a project cost summary in 2 pages and gives you a list of potential project supporters. We're doing with this project something similar to what Flood Control District 10 did with regard to the 2-dimensional hydrologic model that the Water Resource Board helped provide funding for a few years ago. And that is, we're reaching out to stakeholders in the Treasure Valley who are affected by the Treasure Valley's water supply that we'll be speaking with you about today for their support. And as you'll see here, thus far, the Water District is committed to provide funding support. The Treasure Valley Water Use Association as well. Flood Control District 10 has committed funding. We met with Ada County a week and a half or so ago, and the Board of Commissioners has encouraged us to seek up to $50,000 in funding from the county, and we'll be presenting to Canyon County and the others as we go through the course of this year. Okay, now should I press stop share and bring up the presentation? Okay.
Is this what you want to show?
The presentation now, actually.
Was that not what you just showed?
No.
Okay.
So it's on that same disk,
What do you want to see?
this top file right there. Got it.
Should be able to just.
Right here. The back and forth.
Should just advance it.
Advance it, okay. So as with the other presenters, Madam Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, we want to thank you for the opportunity to present this project to you and for your consideration to provide funding for it. Okay, the Treasure Valley is shown, the Treasure Valley watershed is shown in the slide that you can see now. You can see the Boise River beginning at the reservoirs that provide supplemental storage to the river coursing through the major cities of the Treasure Valley. And this image shows in particular a number of the major drains that I'm pointing to with the cursor now, most of which join the river below Middleton and provide the primary source of water supply to the Boise River during the irrigation season. So this project, this water supply assessment project, focuses on those drains that I just mentioned, along with many others that are of smaller scale, but yet do provide important water supply to the Boise River. And why are we focusing on the drains? Well, as I mentioned, they are a primary source of water supply to the Boise River below Middleton. There are numerous water deliveries from the drains that are a major source of irrigation water in the Treasure Valley. And the drains are a bellwether for Treasure Valley water supplies because, as you'll see, they carry water from the shallow aquifer. So they are indicative of the condition of the shallow aquifer. They receive surface water return flows. So they are indicative of declining surface water return flows as lands urbanize. The drains are indicative of the extent of recharge, both from flood irrigation and from canal seepage, and impacts to our water supply from urbanization as it continues at its rampant pace over the last few decades. And so historically, the Treasure Valley outside the Boise River floodplain was a desert. There were no continuously flowing, year-round flowing streams that carried water, tributaries that carried water to the Boise River. The major drains were ephemeral at best, and many of the drains that we're aware of today didn't exist at all. So it was through the period of settlement and irrigation development of the Treasure Valley that the hydrology that we're familiar with today came to exist. And what you're seeing in this image is an outline of all the various places of use of the irrigation districts and canal companies that deliver water to the Treasure Valley. Overlaid on that image now, you can see the intricate water delivery and drainage systems that have evolved over time to deliver water to these lands. This image is indicative of major canal systems diverting water from the Boise River and lateral canal systems that deliver water therefrom. So what transpired over the late 19th century and early 20th century was that seepage from the canal systems you saw and seepage from flood irrigation of the irrigated areas that you saw created the shallow aquifer in the Boise Valley. And as I indicated before, really created the flows that we have seen in the drains over years, so much so that by the period 1904 to 1910, areas of the Treasure Valley were waterlogged and unusable, so that local irrigators worked with the Bureau of Reclamation to develop drainage systems to deepen existing drains or to create new drains to drain the lands that had become waterlogged and make them usable again. What you're seeing here in this slide is a study in 1914 recognizing what I indicated before, that the water supply created by the irrigation system through the shallow aquifer and the drainage system was a significant contributor to Boise River flows. And what you can see now is an image of plans showing many of the drains that were constructed between 1912 and 1918. Here you can see in blue and red drains that were constructed in 1916 and 1917. These drains were dug, many of them to a depth of 10 to 12 or more feet to intercept the shallow aquifer that had been created by the successful irrigation of the valley in the late 19th and early 20th century. And as you saw from an image previously, these drains crisscross much of the Boise Valley. So, and the construction of these drains was so successful, the deepening and widening of them, that flows to the Boise River increased from levels that are indicated in this hydrograph in the area, the arrow that where I'm pointing now, pre-construction, to the flows that you can see in the boulder lines higher up in the figure that I'm pointing to now. 5 Mile Creek is one of those major drains. Similar effect from drainage construction, Mason Creek drain, similar in Indian Creek. And here again is an image showing Indian Creek, Mason Creek, and the 15 mile drainage system in blue, and sub drains connecting with those drains in lighter blue. And overlaid there is in this area south of the river, many of the canals and laterals that deliver water to those areas. So the major factor in our hydrology since certainly the early 90s has been urbanization. And you can see in these images showing the Treasure Valley in 1990 on the left, in the Ada County, and the Ada County in 2021 on the right, the extent of urban development in the area. Similarly, in Canyon County in the Nampa area, dramatic urbanization over the same period of time. So what are the impacts of urbanization on the hydrology of the valley? Urbanization converts flood irrigated fields to pressure irrigated urban areas in subdivisions and homes, and much of the previously irrigated area would be covered by roads and houses and so forth, unirrigated in other words. Conversion thus reduces field seepage, as you would see pre-development in the left image, to a post-development near elimination of recharge to the shallow aquifer and surface return flow to drains from the previously flood irrigated fields. Similarly, development often results in the piping of many previously open laterals and canals. Here you can see on the left some of the canals that have, since their construction and until development, have been open and seeping water into the shallow aquifer as water is conveyed. And you can see in the same area years later after development that the piping of many of these ditches. And over this period of urbanization, water managers that we work with have observed reduced flows in the drainage system, and they've had to supplement drain flows to provide additional water to the drains to feed pump stations and other diversions to irrigated lands in the Treasure Valley. So about 2008, the Bureau of Reclamation performed a study in which they estimated that of 1 million acre feet of recharge to the shallow aquifer in the Boise Valley, half of that recharge is from on-farm field seepage and half is from canal seepage. So what we did a few years later was we asked Dave Shaw of ERO Resources to project what would happen in these four sub-watersheds, 15 Mile, Indian, Mason Creek, and Sand Hollow, if all of the flood irrigated fields were eliminated, if they were either paved over or converted to sprinkler irrigation. And you can see his estimation based on the Bureau's water supply or the study, dramatic reductions in drain discharges. And those reductions are illustrated here graphically in levels as of 2008 in blue. And if there were complete elimination of flood irrigation in those irrigated fields, the extent of drain flows in red that you'd see in those same drains. And you can imagine the impact of this kind of reduction in water supply to the diversions that take water directly from the drains, one, and two, to the Boise River that depend, below Middleton, that depends on these drain discharges for their, for the flow that we see that supplies diversions downstream of Middleton. So what we've undertaken since then is an effort to account for the rate of change, to get a sense of at what rate are lands converting and how quickly and over what period of time is the hydrology of the valley changing as I've described. So what we've done is to, in these same subwatersheds that I've described, delineate, at least most recently as of 2020, in green, the fields that remain in agriculture, flood irrigated agriculture, and delineate in orange those fields between 2016 and 2020 that converted to non-flood irrigated agriculture. Here's a closer look at how we've done that delineation. So what we've determined is over the longer term between 2001 and 2016, that there was a reduction of nearly 47,000 acres of flood irrigated agricultural fields that drain to the Boise River. That's an annual rate of 2%. Over the more recent, more rapid period of urbanization between 2016 and 2020, that rate accelerated to, in these same subwatersheds, to 3 and 4%. Now, if you project a 2.5% rate of conversion over time of flood irrigated fields to non-flood irrigated fields in these subwatersheds, this figure shows the rate of decline you'd expect to see over the next 20 to 30 years. Like Dave Shaw's analysis, dramatic. And so with that background, I want to turn it over to Boise River Water Master Mike Myers to talk about his perspectives on the changing hydrology of the valley and what occurred just last year.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present our proposed project. You gonna run it? So last year on June 30th, we had an issue on the river. Below Middleton, we have 6 diversions that require between 500 and 600 CFS at any given time to be delivered. On June 30th, we actually, after we ran accounting, only had 378 CFS of deliverable water to deliver to the 6 diversions. And the reason we did not catch this in real time, we have to release flow augmentation water out of the river at certain times of the year. And our charge to Water District 63 is to deliver that water to the snake. And so what happened is we delivered some flow aug water that to irrigators that we were short of natural flow. And this is just a snapshot of the accounting page for that day. So this is a graph showing the mean monthly flows of all the gauge drains that flow to the Boise River. And the reason we're pulling this up is just to show you the natural decline, or the decline in the drains that we're seeing over the last 5 years, mainly due to what we think is urbanization. So this is all the gauge USGS drains on the Boise. June 30th, this is looking at all of them on a daily mean flow. And what I want to point out here is that we can see that 3 of the major drains, or 4 of them, had major drops on that particular day. This event lasted for about a week. You can see that Mason Creek was down 76 CFS from the 5-year average. South Middleton drain 28. And if we add all of those up, minus the Conway and the Dixie, that's what we were short of our normal deliveries to the irrigators below Middleton. This is just another graph, and we'll run through these quickly, of Mason Creek of the 5-year average. You can see again the steady declines in these drains, and we'll run through these next few. So this is Mason Creek drain shed and the land use conversion. In orange, and the green is what's irrigated ag lands. Mason Creek discharges above the Boise River to Caldwell and the notice reach. This is something we rely on heavily for making deliveries on the Boise below Middleton. So lessons from the day. Obviously, the Boise River would have approached zero flow between Caldwell and Notice if this had occurred outside of flow augmentation. And it did happen to us in 2021 for a period of about 2 or 3 days where the Boise River actually did go dry. Deliveries downstream of Caldwell rely on return flows and groundwater inflow. Water supply and reliability and security requires an understanding of future flows and groundwater flows to the Boise River. And one of the things that we're concerned about is if this trend continues, downstream water rights will be shorted, and state law may require administering water rights on lower Boise River and its tributaries. So water supply effects. Is this supposed to be turned over to you at this point? No, this is still me. So piping and lining canals, laterals, and drains. These are some of the effects. Reducing seepage loss, reducing groundwater recharge, increasing water supply in canal systems. Obviously, our thought here is that urban development is altering the drainage patterns and the return flows to the Boise River, and conversion from flood irrigation to pressure irrigation eliminates or definitely reduces the water going into the drain. Field seepage, field seepage and other things are reducing it as well. So the action, we want to seek funding, assistance for technologies for monitoring and assessing, and modeling the drains, plan for future managed, plan for and manage the hydraulic impacts of land use changes and surface drainage, return flows, water reuse, groundwater recharge and aquifer levels, along with water supply and water quality. In January of 2023, the Idaho Water Users Association Legislative Committee voted to support the development and pursuit of funding for the Treasure Valley Water Supply and Assessment Project. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mike Schubert with HDR from here. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present this project. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm a water resources engineer with HDR Engineering. And when Mike Myers and the Water District and the Treasure Valley Water Users noted the trends and the events of June 30th last year and similar events, they approached us and asked, okay, how do we start addressing this? How do we take a bite at how do we start to take the first bite at the apple of getting ahead of the declining flows we're seeing in the drains, so we can develop the tools to monitor and to predict and adapt to this watershed in transition. And so what we've put together is a scope of work here to summarize in this slide, and we'll go into depth on the next few slides. But it's a 3-phase project, and what we're starting with phase 1, and that's to develop a robust drain monitoring network and start to compile the data in hydrologic analysis and online data hub. The second phase in this is to continue the monitoring and analysis, and also ultimately build out a surface water supply tool that will allow the Water District and others to anticipate changes to drain flow and surface water supply. And then phase 3 ultimately gets to the so what. So what do we do about these trends that we're seeing in the way of investments in improvements to the system and in changes to irrigation system management. So Dan, if you go to the next slide. Phase 1, as I said, is really collecting and analyzing. You're starting to collect the data and starting to analyze the flow data. Water District 63 is well underway in establishing diversion, measurement, and automation, and using the same telemetry and technology has the ability to monitor flows in the drains and the sub-drains, up the systems. So what we're envisioning here is developing a more in-depth network of flow measurement, where we look at the key locations in the drains and the sub-drains, start to identify the locations of the largest diversions off of these drains, key canal crossings. We would be working with the irrigation district managers and the water managers in the areas to identify locations that are mutually beneficial, with the goal of developing a long-term monitoring network on these drains. The second part of phase 1 is to start to compile the existing flow data we have on the drains. We have about 6 years right now of flow data on the drains that have been collected to support the Treasure Valley groundwater model. Use the data that we have in the Boise River to start to update and refine our understanding of reach gains and losses and ungauged changes to flow on the Boise River. And then ultimately, the third step of this phase 1 is to take a look at the drain flow data we have and start to, with some broad strokes, quantify the changes that we're seeing in the drains and how those correlate to changes in land use, changes in operations, and water management. Phase 2 is what we're calling completing the hydrologic picture. So this is building out a surface water modeling tool that allows us to predict and adapt to these changes that we're seeing. So this builds on the Treasure Valley groundwater flow model. The Treasure Valley groundwater flow model models and estimates flow from groundwater to the drains. So that's an important input to the equation for drains. So if you think about drains as kind of a flow chart, that's the red arrow on the right side of this slide. That's groundwater inflow to the drains. In addition to that, during irrigation season, we have spills to the drains, either intentional or unintentional. We have direct runoff from flood irrigated fields, and we have diversions from those drains. All of those add up to what flow we see downstream in the drains, all to the Boise River. So phase 2 is incorporating the Treasure Valley groundwater model, changes in land use that influence direct runoff, and then also the irrigation system operations, so we can complete that hydrologic picture on the drains. And again, just to build on this is phase 2 really builds on and is enabled by the Treasure Valley groundwater model. We've had discussions with Stephen Hunt with USGS, who developed the groundwater model, on the ability to use the drain flow from the model as an input to this type of analysis. And and Stephen would plan on continuing to consult and work with Stephen to make sure that we're doing that in a way that that leverages the model in an appropriate way. I think it's important to note that the Treasure Valley groundwater model was calibrated to drain flow during non-irrigation season. That's when your operational spills would be, it's when you wouldn't have operational spills. It's when you wouldn't have runoff directly from fields. And that's when we wouldn't have diversion. So that's an appropriate calibration of the model. And again, lends itself to taking this next step, which is understanding drain flow during irrigation season. I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is establishing a flow network in the drains, could benefit the Treasure Valley groundwater model moving forward. These next few slides just show some of the changes of landscape that we could model the impacts of from the different comprehensive plans from the counties, Canyon County, Ada County, and the municipalities, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, Eagle, Star, and Middleton. And then phase 3 is ultimately what do we do about it? We've heard a couple of presentations on projects that manage surface water and groundwater resources. So those are some of the types of products that we could look at: groundwater management, recharge, surface water supply management, mitigation, changes to operations, water conservation incentives, and then also we've been discussing how to manage and mitigate hydrologic impacts of land use changes as they occur. So one way that we might do that is requesting that developers retain unlined canals and laterals if that makes sense, and if it's in an important area, and that this model would indicate that, or in the development of diversion ponds and pools that would again contribute to distributed recharge where it existed as flood irrigated lands. This is just another example of a diversion pond. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Mike Myers to talk through the project costs.
So phase 1 of the project development, 15,000. Startup cost. This is for some measuring equipment as far as a Doppler boat and the telemetry and transducers used to start measuring the drains and diversions. Annual maintenance, most of the annual maintenance is salaries for Daniel and I at Water District 63, along with some incidentals for telemetry and automation stuff. And then phase 1 analytics is set at 50,000. Phase 2 cost, a lot of that depends on what we find in phase 1, but annual maintenance is again taking care of the equipment out on site and going out and physically measuring drains at least once a month. And then annual analytics of the model is 200,000. So each year we're looking at about 330,000 for phase 2, and then phase 3 is completely determined on what we find in phase 2. So this, I won't go over this in great detail, but this is just a breakdown of the startup costs and the annual maintenance, and you can look over that. And then these are some project sponsors and the funding that we are looking at, and this is for you to just look over. I will mention that Water District 63 is we're going to ask the water users of Water District 63 for 71,000, and half of that is labor in kind. So that's the list of the project sponsors we're hoping to get funding from. Thank you for your time, and we'll stand for any questions.
Mike, I do have one question. What is the plan for ongoing maintenance? You indicated that in phase 2, it's 330,000 annually. Are you?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So ongoing maintenance is for the telemetry units, transducers, the measuring equipment of the drains, and then the actual on-site measuring the water in the drains to verify the data to the telemetry units. And then I'll let Mike Schubert speak about the annual maintenance for the analytics.
Well, I guess I want to clarify. My question is not so much what it's for, but is your request that the Water Resource Board fund this annually?
Oh.
The request is for, as you can see on the supporter sheet, for $155,500 from the Water Resource Board for phase 1. We'll be pursuing funding for phases 2 and 3 in the future as the project continues. but our request to the Water Resource Board at this time pertains only to phase one.
And a one-time cost of 155,000.
Correct.
Is that, okay. Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Well, thank you for that informative project. I did learn a lot with that, with the drain fields. Thank you. And
Next project, Madam Chair, will be the American Falls Spillway Rehabilitation. And who's leading? Cresta, are you gonna lead the discussion on that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick it off, and then we'll have some contributions by others as well. Are you able to see my screen?
yes, and we can hear you.
Oh, great, great. All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, as well as members of the board and staff. My name is Cresta Davis. I'm a senior manager at Idaho Power. And during this presentation, you'll also hear from Alan Hanstein, manager of the Northside Canal Company, and Kevin Lakely, manager of American Falls Reservoir District 2, as well as Bigwood Canal Company. Both Alan and Kevin will represent the spaceholders within the American Falls Reservoir, who are a party of our joint grant application. In addition, we're also joined by Nicole Carson, program manager, and Ryan Bliss, technical services manager, with the Snake River area office of the Bureau of Reclamation. Both Nicole and Ryan are here to provide details associated with the American Falls Dam rehabilitation work that was identified in our joint grant application. So with that, we'll go ahead and get going. As far as project background, I think there's a lot of detail here, but really I want to highlight a couple of areas. The first is the legacy associated with the American Falls Dam and Reservoir project. Hydropower production at this site goes back well over 100 years, starting in 1902. And then the first dam was built between 1925 and 1927 as part of the Curie Act's Minidoka project. And that was really intended to open up more lands for irrigation or an agricultural use. So there's quite a legacy with this project, and quite a bit of development that has occurred since those early years. Right now, the reservoir sits at a storage volume of almost 1.7 million acre feet, so a substantial amount of storage within the project. And because of that, there is a lot of beneficial use associated with that, primarily starting with irrigation, and then secondarily power production, recharge, recreation. And when we start talking about recreation, of course, that gets into fishing, boating, wildlife. And then there's also some incidental flood control associated with the project. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin Lakey. I want to take the opportunity to speak in front of the committee. I represent American Falls Reservoir District number 2.
Hey, Kevin, can I interrupt just for a second?
American Falls. Yeah.
Kevin, your audio is robotic. Is there anything you can do to improve your audio?
I don't think so. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. It's just very broken up and has has that robotic tone.
Yeah, I must have a bad signal here. Yeah.
So perhaps while Kevin works on it, I can at least walk through the bullet points here, and then if we're able to get that working, he can perhaps add to anything that I may have missed. But as you can see here, 100% of District 2's or American Falls Reservoir District 2's water is delivered from American Falls Reservoir, and no other rights are held by the district to provide water for their need. So the importance of that storage is significant. And when we think about additional beneficial uses, AFRD2 also has generation associated with water delivery in the area of $1 to $2 million benefit annually to their constituents. They're also a major contributor to the state's managed recharge program. In the 2022 to 2023 recharge season, AFRD2 recharged over 90,000 acre feet to the ESPA. They're also a major partner in the annual American Falls Reservoir Shoreline Riprap project, which is done annually to ensure the integrity of the reservoir. They do that through contributing both labor and equipment. Okay. And with that, we'll shift over to the Northside Canal Company with Alan.
Thank you, Krista, and thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee and the Water Resource Board that are in attendance today, and staff, for your consideration of our project here at American Falls Reservoir. My name is Alan Hanstein. I am the General Manager of Northside Canal Company, which holds storage space in American Falls Reservoir. The graphic on the right side of this slide, you can see our location. We're about midway between Boise and Idaho Falls, South Idaho, on the north side of the river there. And then the graphic on the left delineates our service area. Here we run from Milner Dam in the Hazelton area down to the King Hill area, providing irrigation water to 160,000 acres of farmland. We have 5 hydroelectric power plants on our system that generate about a little over 100,000 megawatt hours of electricity every year to provide energy for approximately 10,000 homes. Every other year, in partnership with the state of Idaho, we provide 113,000 acre feet of recharge water to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer, and we alternate with American Falls Reservoir District Number 2 every other year. So we'll have it one recharge season, and then they'll have it the next, due to the amount of flow that we're both able to convey through our systems. Each year, we run about 1 million acre feet of irrigation water to our growers. And of that 1 million acre feet, 431,000 is made up of our reservoir storage, which is held in American Falls. So roughly 43% of our water supply comes out of the American Falls Reservoir. And our total percentage within American Falls Reservoir itself is 26%. We are also the lead contractor on the American Falls riprap project that is performed each year to control the erosion around the shoreline area of the reservoir, and we've been doing that for 38 years.
Are there any questions?
I'm
Again,
not seeing any. Oh, go ahead.
okay, no problem. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, and so I'll speak a little bit to Idaho Power and the company's perspective as far as the importance of American Falls. So the map that you're seeing over to the left, in this darker brown area is a depiction of our service territory. Within our service territory, we have more than 620,000 customers that we serve. And our generating resources consist of hydropower, natural gas, coal, and then we also have some contracted generators as well. But primarily, the bulk of our power comes from our hydropower fleet. And at the uppermost facility is the American Falls facility. And then below that, we have several hydropower plants that lie along the Snake River until we get to our largest complex, the Hells Canyon complex that borders Idaho and Oregon. And this gives you an idea of that mix. So this is our 2022 energy mix, and you can see that hydroelectric composed a little over 30% of our total generation, and that was followed by market purchases. And then we also have, again, those contracted resources such as wind, solar, and geothermal. And then over to the lower left, you'll see coal and natural gas and their contribution. So last year, this 31% equates to around 5.3 million megawatt hours generated off of a hydropower. And of that, 4% of that generation came from American Falls. Over to the right, this just gives you an idea of how our generation mix compares to the national average. And you can see that there's quite a difference in that hydroelectric contribution when we look at the national average. And our ability to generate using hydropower is a significant benefit to customers in that it provides our lowest cost resource, so that it enables us to keep our prices lower than the national average, and also contribute significantly to reliability as we integrate variable resources such as wind and solar. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to the Bureau of Reclamation and Nicole and Ryan to walk through the project description associated with the American Falls Rehabilitation application.
Good morning. Just making sure you guys can hear us okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm Nicole Carson. I'm the program manager over the Planning and Project Management Group for Snake River Area Office. I'm going to go through the first couple projects, and then Ryan Bliss will go over the next couple. So the American Falls Spillway Repair Project, that project has been underway for quite some time. We wrapped up construction last September, but the construction activities address the need for replacement of the now 45-year-old dam, which had degraded over the focus was, the original scope was to demo, remove, and replace existing damaged concrete on the spillway face, stilling basin floor, dam face, dam entrances, and the operator gate decks, which are up above on the roadway, just off the roadway. In September of 2021, due to some unforeseen issues and delays, which I'll speak a little more to, we revised that scope and essentially de-scoped to just include the demolition, removal, and replacement of existing concrete on the spillway face, the dam face, and then the dam entrances. Overall construction began summer of 2020, and it was scheduled to be completed in fall of 2021. Due to unforeseen issues and delays, construction was delayed, and the original construction contract was terminated in March of 2021. A new contract was awarded to Ames Construction in June of 2021. And Cresta, I'm sorry, I see a typo on my slide, but that new contract was awarded in June of 2021. So very quick turnaround from the termination. And then we resumed construction July of 2021 and completed again September of 2022. If we go to the next slide. So there's a photo here showing the active construction that is now wrapped up. Our current phase of the project, we're in closeout. We're working through final contract closeout activities and lessons learned on the project. This overall schedule of the project, we began in fiscal year 2015 with our planning efforts. We had our TSC, our Technical Services Center, come out and do some core sampling that informed the design that occurred in fiscal year 2016 and 17. In 18 and 19, we did our acquisitions. And then of course, construction occurred in 2020 through 2022. Next slide. Currently, the budget is sitting at 12.1 million. Typically, any project that is done on the American Falls Dam, the allocation is 27.81% appropriated federal dollars, 33% is paid for by Idaho Power, and then 39.2% is paid for by the space holders. So you can see that breakout at the top in the blue color. Because of the termination and some research that was done throughout reclamation, the regional director determined that we were going to give the credit for the original contract bond to Idaho Power and the space holders. So that occurred last August, and you'll see down at the bottom the redistributed costs of that 12.1 million. That puts 71.56 to appropriations, 13% to Idaho Power, and 15.44% to our space holders. We are continuing to close this out, and final project costs will be determined in the very near future. Any questions on this project before I move on to the next? Okay.
I'm not seeing. Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Next slide. So the next project that we have going on at American Falls is our radial gate trunnion pin replacement. So at American Falls, we have 5 radial gates that sit on the top of the structure. Those are not used for operations typically, but they're there for flood control if we need them. What we found is that the trunnion pins and bushings, there's 2 per gate, are beginning to bind, causing some thrust washers to break. On gate 4 in particular, we've had issues with one of the pins. It is now seized up, and so that gate cannot be fully operated at this time. This project is going to address that. So the overall scope of this project, I've got 2 items listed there. Let me hit the bottom one to explain the big picture of the trunnion pins. The pins, bushings, and thrust washers, 10 total, so 2 per gate, will be removed and replaced on each of those 5 gates. We are proposing to do 1 gate per year. Our construction window, of course, is when that reservoir is lower than the OG. So that's going to be between August and December annually. And the work is going to be completed by the Tennessee Valley Authority versus a traditional construction contract. We are going to begin this year with gate 4, which has the seized pin, and get that addressed first. And then we'll come back each year and do 1 gate per year. In order to get this work done efficiently and without disrupting traffic on the road above, we came up with a solution to place 2 crane pads on each side of the stilling basin walls of of, or on this, each side of the spillway. And that will allow a crane to be in place to facilitate this work. The other benefit of doing these crane pads is they'll be, you know, we can use those in the future for other projects and our O&M annually. Next slide. So a current phase of this project, we're in execution, installation of those pins. The overall schedule, we began planning for this in late 2021. I believe is when we found the seized pin during the spillway construction. We started design in fiscal year 2022. In our current fiscal year 2023, we're working through the acquisitions piece, which that is an interagency agreement with Tennessee Valley Authority. They are going to procure the materials and then of course do the installation work. And then we are beginning work on gate 4 this August. Looking forward to fiscal year 2024 through 2027, we'll be completing gate 4 installation and then doing gate 1, 2, 3, and 5. And we are planning to be in closeout during fiscal year 2027 as well. Current cost estimate for this work is about $7.3 million. And that is through the normal allocation for American Falls, which you can see below. Ryan, anything you want to add on this one?
Nope.
Any questions for Ryan or I on this project?
Yes, I do. So is your request to the Idaho Water Resource Board for this project the $7.3 million?
I'll defer that to Kresta.
Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. The request is in total for the spillway work, the trunnion pin repair, and then the next project that will be described. And it is to cover the space holder portion as well as Idaho Power's portion.
Thank you. So do you have a slide that shows the total amount?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Am I jumping ahead? Are you not done with the presentation yet?
Madam Chair, we do have another project that we'd like to walk you through, and then we'll go ahead and summarize the total budget. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we have 2 more projects. These are, one's ongoing and one is in the planning phase. This project that's up here is the guard gate inspection repair. We have Nicole talked about the radial gates, and that's the trunnion pin project. Well, below that are slide gates. And that's our primary method of passing water when it's not going through Idaho Power's power plant. We're having some leaking issues, and we have in-house staff going in and doing maintenance and repairs on them. We're adjusting alignment, as well as the coating repairs and fixing some seals at the same time. This work is being done with in-house staff, like I said earlier, and we're trying to do 2 gates a year. And so we'll be working on this project we started last year, and we'll go through 2031. Next slide. Krista, can you move us to the next slide? We might have a lag here. Thank you. Another project we're doing are the power plant dam intakes. These are what stops the water or controls the water to the Idaho Power's power plant. This is reclamation assets. These are original construction to the dam. They are a hydraulic cylinder that lifts gates up and down. We're having issues with our control system and our oil seals on the cylinders. We had a pump seal failure last year, and we spilled some oil, and we're having some leakage issues. They will drift down over time, and we're having to cycle equipment additionally to keep the gates in the full up position. And so we have a project coming up in the future after we finish the trunnion pin project to replace the operators. And then at the same time to replace the metal guide works that are down, that are below those gate operators that the intake gate follows as it goes into the closed position. And that will be, that's in the planning phase at this time. Next slide. We kind of got some slides out of order here. This goes back to the guard gate project. This is the work that's being done by in-house staff. This shows the schedule, like I mentioned earlier, we're doing one set of gates, a guard gate, a service gate each year. You can see that total estimated cost is about $450,000, and we're looking at about $50,000 per year to complete that work. You can see the cost allocation is the same as Nicole had shared earlier. Next slide. And this is back on the dam intake replacement. Our current planning schedule identifies going into design in 2028, contracting in 2029, and then on-site construction between 2030 and 2032, completing one gate a year during the non-irrigation season. And then the estimated cost at this time is about $5.9 million, with the same allocation as the other projects we've discussed. Are there any questions? I think this wraps up kind of the technical pieces of the specific projects that we wanted to share with you today.
Any questions so far? Board members, committee members? I'm not seeing any.
One thing that we've been doing is providing a 5-year outlook to all of our stakeholders. And what Cresta has on the screen here is our snapshot that we provided to all stakeholders for American Falls for our current 5-year outlook. We just shared this in late March of this spring, identifying projects, timeframes, and estimated costs.
Okay. All right. So the final slide here is a breakdown of that. So we've taken all of those projects and distributed out, starting with the spillway project, and then outlined them as they fall out through time. Right here, you'll have the annual total for each of those years out into the future. And then to your earlier question, Madam Chair, below is a breakout of the cost share as it's been described by Nicole and Ryan, with the 27.8% falling to reclamation, the 39.2% falling to space holders, and the 33% falling to Idaho Power. So down below, highlighted in the light blue, is the annual total cost to space holders and the falling water component. And then if we total that up over this period of time, with the new estimate delivered by the Bureau of Reclamation earlier this year, the total cost for space holders and the falling water contract is around $12.5 million.
Okay, excellent. I mean, the layout is excellent. How you put this together. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair, Al Barker.
Yes.
Is there, I'm not sure who's the best to answer this question. Maybe John or Travis or Alan, but what's the breakdown of the space holders, the 39% between, is it just between AFRD2 and Northside, or are there other space holders involved in this?
Madam Chair, Board Member Barker, this is John Simpson, and I don't have the total breakdown available to me right now. I believe we had it in our original application we made for a aging infrastructure application we made back to the board nearly a year ago, but American Falls number 2 and Northside are not the only space holders who store water in American Falls, have water stored in American Falls, receive benefits from American Falls. They are 2 of the largest space holders, and that's the reason they were contacted to provide some background. In addition, background that they regarding the maintenance that they perform annually with respect to the riprap and other activities. But in our original application to the board, we identified those space holders. There are space holders not only below American Falls, but also above American Falls, who are going to benefit directly from this project in terms of their water supply availability, the cost of that water supply available to them. And I would just note additionally that there are recreational wildlife benefits from the reservoir. It's actively used by the public for boating, for fishing, for other activities, and then there's quite a fishing population in the reservoir as well.
I see that we just received a contact or a note from Travis Thompson that there are 35 space holders.
And Krista, if helpful, we can certainly get you that breakdown that we use during those space holder meetings that you can provide the state.
Okay.
I didn't hear any of that. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Can you repeat that, Nicole? Because I think we couldn't hear you. I could not hear you very well either.
I sure can. I'll talk loud. We do have a breakdown of the space holders in American Falls, so we can, I believe, Krista, you guys have that, but just in case not, we can send that over and that can be provided if helpful.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think it would be good have that in the record of this application if it's not already. And I think John indicated it may be, but it would be good to make sure we know who the beneficiaries are.
Okay. So Neely, can you take care of that? Make sure that we've got those stakeholders listed in the aging infrastructure grant application they put in for nearly a year ago, and if not, add them. Well, even if they did, add them to this presentation for the record.
Yeah, we'll make sure that happens, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is
Yes.
Dale. I don't know if I'm missing something here. What's the financial responsibility for the Water Resource Board in these projects? Do they know that yet?
Yes, Del, I think the last slide that Krista showed an obligation total there of, well, I'll let her speak to this.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Madam Chair, Committee Member Van Stone. Yeah, the ask under the grant application from space holders and Idaho Power would be the portion for these projects falling to those responsible parties, and that would be the $12,486,000 reflected on this slide here.
Yes, Krista, I understand that, but what directly is the dollar amount that the Water Resource Board will be responsible for? We're part of the stakeholders, I take it, I guess, but what is our share going to be out of all that?
Madam Chair, this is John Simpson. If I may, perhaps I can respond to Board Member Van Stone's question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. Dale, this is John, and I believe the board has 5,000 acre feet of storage in Palisades Reservoir. So if your question goes to whether or not the board's storage that it has in the upper snake above Milner is a part of the space holder costs percentage that Cresta referred to earlier, not with respect to those costs. If there was an application similar to this for Palisades, then certainly the board would have some direct percentage obligation. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think so. Yeah, we'll let this proceed because and see where it goes. But I'm not sure what our responsibility is as far as dollars amount at the Water Resource Board. But I think it'll work its way out once we get all the information. Okay,
Dell, my understanding is that this project is requesting 12,486,758 for the projects for the spillway that's already been done and the 2 gates to cover the cost of the space holders share and the Idaho Power share of the total project. Is that correct, Cresta?
Yes, thank you. That is correct, Madam Chair.
But this is Dale again. Our responsibility is not the 12,800 some thousand, is it? It's shared. It's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, yes, they have broken it up into 3 parts: the Bureau of Reclamation, the space holders, and Idaho Power. They're asking us to cover the costs for the space holders and Idaho Power. And at this point in time, the Water Resource Board is just merely, Finance Committee is just merely listening to these projects and getting as much information as we can before we determine what the responsibility of the Water Resource Board will be.
Okay, I accept that. Yes, maybe I got ahead of myself here a little bit, but that's okay. Thank you for that information.
Madam Chairman, Brian Olmstead here. I just want to elaborate a little bit on what John Simpson said. I don't think there could be any argument that American Falls Dam is probably the most important structure in the state of Idaho. It supplies well over 1 million acres of direct irrigation. It has endangered species, flow augmentation responsibilities. It's a large hydropower producer, and I just can't imagine the economic benefits that this structure provides to the state of Idaho. And so $12 million sounds like a lot of money, but the state economy wouldn't even survive without all the benefits that American Falls Dam provides to so many people. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? Well, this has certainly been a full day of presentations, and we do appreciate everyone taking the time and the effort to bring your projects before this committee, and pretty much the whole board participated with the committee, which I think is important. I guess with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian Patton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Next item on the agenda would be other non-action items that committee members may have.
Jeff,
I'm good, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Board Member Stevenson, are you still with us? Yep, you're still there. Do you have anything? Okay. Board Member Van Stone, do you have anything?
No, I'm good right now. Yes, thank you.
Any other members have any questions or have anything to ask of the Finance Committee or comments? Okay, I see that John Simpson has his hand up. Do you have another comment, John?
No, Madam Chair, if I have my hand up, it's by mistake, so I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I want to thank everybody for participating via Zoom, even though we have challenges. A lot of information can be shared to many people across the state at one time. I think the technical challenges are worth the effort through the Zoom portal. So thank you for bearing through that. Our next Finance Committee meeting, I think, is scheduled for next week on Thursday at noon, if I'm correct, at noon Pacific time.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct, June 8th. And we'll have another round of presentations from additional projects.
Looking forward to it.
And I would just note that some of you have a Streamflow Committee meeting in about 40 minutes at 1 o'clock Boise time. So we'll see some of you back in a little more than half an hour.
Hey, Brian, this is Al. Do we have a list of who's up next Thursday?
We do. It is Jennifer's telling me that agenda has already been posted on the website. If you need, we can send it to you, Al.
I can find it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I did just pull it up. It's a New York Canal Lining Project, the Gooding Flood Control Project, the Palouse Basin Aquifer Water Supply Project. Just 3 projects.
Hey.
Okay. All right, so I think we're at the point where we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I so move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I don't think you've got a second, but I think there's a loophole in Robert's rules. You don't need a second on a motion to adjourn.
All right, perfect. We're adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.